The clink of cutlery echoed louder than the words that never came. Dinner had become a ritual of silence. My husband Daniel, once a man of warmth and easy laughter, now sat across from me with his eyes fixed on his plate, as though conversation were an inconvenience. I studied the curve of his jaw, the tightness in his shoulders, the way he chewed without tasting. There was no tenderness in the way he looked at me anymore, only distraction. His phone, placed beside his fork, buzzed once, screen flashing, but he turned it face down without explanation. "Long day?" I asked, forcing my voice into casual lightness. "Yeah," he muttered. No elaboration, no curiosity about my own day. Just the word, like a door slamming shut. I smiled, or tried to, though my chest ached. This was not the man who used to lean across the table to steal bites from my plate, who would tease me about how much sugar I poured into my tea. This man had grown cold, rehearsed, distant. At night the distance only widened. He came to bed late, his body heavy with exhaustion, smelling faintly of cologne I didn't recognize. When I reached for him, he rolled away, mumbling about deadlines. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, counting the beats between his shallow breaths, wondering what invisible wall had risen between us. I wanted to ask, to demand, but my throat tightened each time, strangling the words. What if it was nothing? What if I was wrong? The fear of sounding paranoid chained me in silence. So I smiled through the days. I cooked, I cleaned, I laughed at the right times. Pretending became my armor. Even as suspicion gnawed at my insides like rust spreading across metal. Still, his excuses piled higher. Late meeting, urgent report, just tired. I nodded, always nodded. Though inside me something fragile began to fracture. And as I watched him retreat deeper into shadows I couldn't reach, one thought echoed louder than all others. What is he hiding from me? The question haunted me long after Daniel's steady breathing lulled the house into silence. What is he hiding from me? I lay beside him in the dark, my eyes open, my body rigid, waiting. He turned in his sleep, his hand brushing against mine, but it felt foreign, like the touch of a stranger. Sometime after midnight, a faint vibration broke the stillness. His phone lit up on the nightstand, spilling a pale glow across the sheets. My heart thudded painfully as I watched him stir but not wake. He had changed his password weeks ago, something he dismissed as a work security thing. I stared at the glowing screen. One name appeared again and again in the preview of messages I wasn't meant to read. Clara. A simple name, sharp as a knife. My throat dried. Clara was his boss. I remembered the way he had mentioned her once, quick, dismissive, as though she were a formality. But now her name arrived past midnight, whispered in the dark through digital light. The next evening I caught him stepping out into the hallway, phone pressed tightly to his ear. His voice was low, urgent, softened by words he never used on me anymore. "I'll handle it," I heard him murmur before he noticed me standing in the shadows. "Who was that?" I asked, voice careful, trembling beneath the surface. "Work," he said too quickly. "Don't wait up." He brushed past me, his cologne trailing behind, leaving me colder than the empty hallway. I pressed my palms into the wall, trying to steady myself. Jealousy twisted into fear, and fear into something darker. The name Clara etched itself into my mind like an infection, impossible to ignore. I wanted to scream, to demand answers. But I swallowed the urge. My instincts screamed louder. I needed proof. A confrontation without evidence would only give him another excuse to call me paranoid. So I waited. I watched. I listened. And though silence still filled our house, inside me a storm gathered strength. The storm inside me could no longer be contained. Nights of staring at his glowing phone, the whispered calls, the name Clara repeating like a curse. It all pressed against my chest until breathing felt impossible. That evening, as Daniel walked through the door with his tie loosened and his smile rehearsed, I decided I would ask. I stood by the counter, arms folded, waiting. "Who is Clara?" The words escaped harsher than I intended, sharp in the still air of our kitchen. He froze. For a heartbeat, something flickered across his face, guilt perhaps or fear. Then it was gone. He chuckled, shaking his head as though I'd told a ridiculous joke. "Clara?" He let out a sigh, amused, dismissive. "She's my boss. You know that. Don't start inventing things again." Again, the word stung like a slap. I've seen the messages, Daniel. At night, she calls you. He stepped forward, his expression softening, his voice dripping with concern. Emma, listen to yourself. You're exhausted. You've been overthinking. You always do this when I'm stressed at work. Gaslight. The word pulsed in my mind even as my heart faltered. His tone was gentle, affectionate even, yet every syllable carried a knife. You think I'm lying? I whispered, though my certainty had begun to crumble. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face, his thumb lingering on my cheek. I think you're scared of losing me. But you won't, I love you. Don't let paranoia ruin what we have. The intimacy of his touch clashed violently with the distance I felt inside. Tears pricked my eyes, not from his words, but from the cruel way he twisted them. I wanted to scream, to push him away, to demand the truth he buried behind that mask. But instead I nodded, swallowing my protests like poison. As he kissed my forehead and walked away, relief in his stride, I felt myself shrinking into silence. And yet, deep inside, the suspicion refused to die. It only sharpened, whispering, "Follow him. See for yourself." His kiss still burned on my forehead like a brand of deceit. The softness of his tone, the way he had dismissed my fears as paranoia, only deepened the wound. I couldn't breathe inside the lies anymore. That night, when he slipped on his jacket and muttered about a late client call, I decided to stop waiting for answers. I waited 10 minutes after the door shut, heart pounding in my throat. Then I grabbed my keys, slipped into the night, and followed the faint glow of his taillights through the rain-slick streets. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, sweat cold against my palms, but my eyes never left his car. He drove across town, away from the office, away from anywhere he'd ever said he needed to be. My pulse quickened as his car finally slowed, pulling into the underground garage of a modern, glass-walled apartment building. It was the kind of place dripping with money, the kind of place that didn't belong to us. I parked on the street, heart hammering. Minutes crawled like hours until I saw him emerge from the elevator above, his silhouette clear through the illuminated lobby windows. And then I saw her, Clara, tall, immaculate, every movement deliberate. She stepped forward and he leaned into her arms as though he had been starving for that embrace. His hands curved around her waist, her lips brushed his cheek. The intimacy was undeniable. My chest tightened so violently I thought I might collapse right there on the sidewalk. I bit my lip until the metallic taste of blood filled my mouth, forcing myself not to scream. Every instinct urged me to burst through those glass doors, to drag him back, to spit every ounce of fury I had swallowed. But my legs refused to move. Instead, I turned away, retreating into the night, rage and heartbreak colliding in silence. I gripped the steering wheel so hard on the drive home that my knuckles whitened, each breath a promise I didn't yet understand. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Sleep was impossible after what I had seen. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his hand circling her waist, his head bent close to hers, the intimacy of lovers unashamed. But it wasn't just the betrayal that kept me awake. It was her. Clara. At dawn, I sat hunched over my laptop, the glow of the screen burning into my tired eyes. A name, a face, a presence that commanded every corner of my thoughts. Clara Whitmore, CEO of the firm Daniel worked under. Articles painted her as a visionary leader, ruthless in her ambition, admired by many but feared by more. Every image of her oozed confidence. Dark tailored suits, sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through the camera, a smile that was never warm but always calculated. She wasn't just a woman. She was a force. The more I read, the clearer the pattern became. Men spoke of her like moths circling a flame, drawn, destroyed, forgotten. And now Daniel was among them. My heart clenched as I realized this wasn't some reckless affair. No, she had him under her thumb, weaving threads around his career, his future, and now, his marriage. I imagined her whispering into his ear during late meetings, dangling promotions as bait, pulling him further from me with every promise. The control wasn't merely physical. It was power, raw and unyielding. Daniel wasn't just betraying me. He was being consumed. The thought ignited something darker in me. If she were only a fling, perhaps I could have forgiven him, maybe even fought for him. But Clara was a predator, and predators didn't let go until there was nothing left of their prey. I shut the laptop with a sharp snap, breath ragged, fists trembling. My marriage wasn't slipping through my fingers because of chance. It was being stolen, and I wasn't about to let her win. The snap of the laptop still echoed in my head, but by the next evening, the tension between Daniel and me could no longer be disguised. We sat across from each other in the living room, the TV flickering with a show neither of us watched. The silence was no longer comfortable. It was suffocating. "You've been different lately," I said carefully, though my voice shook. His eyes darted toward me, cold and sharp. "Different? Or maybe you've been imagining things again. You always do this when I'm under pressure." My jaw clenched. "Pressure or Clara?" His lips tightened, his body stiff. "Don't start." He stood, pacing the room, running a hand through his hair. "Do you have any idea how much stress I'm under? You think it helps to have you accusing me every night? Maybe if you trusted me, things wouldn't feel this way." The words dug into me like claws. It wasn't guilt in his voice, and it was anger, resentment, the kind that made me question if he still even wanted to be here. "You're blaming me?" I whispered. "I'm saying maybe this marriage isn't working anymore." His tone was flat, almost careless. "Maybe divorce wouldn't be the end of the world." The air shattered around me. Divorce? He said it as though it were a casual solution, not a blade slicing through years of shared life. I forced my expression into stillness, though inside panic and rage churned together, thick and poisonous. He left the room muttering about needing sleep, leaving me alone with the echo of that word. Divorce. I sat frozen, staring into the empty space he'd abandoned. Slowly the fear hardened into something sharper. If Clara was stealing my husband, if Daniel was willing to throw me aside so easily, then perhaps the only way to reclaim power was not through words but through action. The thought settled inside me, cold and certain. Revenge no longer felt like fantasy. It felt like inevitability. The word divorce haunted me for days, curling in my chest like a parasite. Daniel moved around the house as if I were a shadow, distant and dismissive, his phone never far from his hand. Every glance at that screen was another reminder of her, Clara, the woman who had stolen his loyalty, his affection, his very soul. The night of the storm, the sky itself seemed to echo my fury. Rain hammered against the windshield as I drove, wipers thrashing in frantic arcs. Each flash of lightning illuminated the road, urging me forward, until the glass tower of Clara's apartment rose from the gloom like a monument to betrayal. I parked and sat in silence, my fingers gripping the steering wheel until they ached. I told myself I only wanted to talk, to see her face, to understand what spell she had cast. But beneath that fragile excuse, I knew the truth. I wanted to end this war she had waged against my life. The elevator carried me upward, my reflection fractured in the mirrored walls. My hair clung damp to my cheeks, my breath shallow. When the doors opened, Clara herself stood in the hallway, sleek and composed even in her casual clothes, as though the storm outside could never touch her. "Emma," she said coolly, as though expecting me. I wondered how long it would take. Her voice ignited the rage already burning inside me. Words spilled, accusations, curses, the years of my marriage she had poisoned. She laughed, soft and cutting, telling me Daniel had chosen her willingly, that he belonged in her world, not mine. The storm roared in my ears, drowning reason. I remember shoving her hand striking my face in return, nails drawing blood. I remember the flash of kitchen steel glinting under the light, her gasp as it cut through the air. Then silence. Only silence. Clara's body lay crumpled on the floor, eyes wide, blood pooling across the polished wood. My chest heaved, my hands slick and trembling, the knife clattering to the ground. I staggered back, the weight of what I had done pressing down like the storm itself. I couldn't undo it, but I could still survive it. My breath came in ragged bursts as I stared at Clara's still body, the storm outside rattling the windows like a warning. Blood clung to my hands, hot and sticky, refusing to wash away no matter how I scrubbed in her bathroom sink. The mirror reflected a ghost, hair wild, eyes hollow, a murderer staring back at me. I forced myself to think. Panic would get me caught. Logic control, that was survival. I retraced my steps, wiping down every surface I touched, leaving the knife where it had fallen. Let them believe it was sudden, chaotic, unplanned. Because it was. By the time I stumbled back into my car, the storm had thinned to drizzle. My clothes clung damp to my skin, but the blood was gone. At least what could be seen. My heart hammered as I rehearsed my alibi. A late run to the pharmacy, a migraine that had kept me restless, a quick detour before heading home. Harmless, ordinary. When I opened the front door of our house, Daniel barely looked up from the couch. His tie was loosened, his laptop perched on his knees. "You're late," he muttered absently. I swallowed the hysteria clawing at my throat and forced a steady smile. "Couldn't sleep. Went out for some air." He nodded, distracted, never noticing the faint tremor in my hands. Relief flooded me, bitter and fleeting. For now, he was blind. But the world outside wasn't. Each passing car made me flinch. Every police siren that wailed in the distance sent my pulse racing. Did they know already? Had someone seen me? My mind painted images of Clara's apartment door swinging open, of neighbors calling 911, of footsteps already tracking me down. I lay in bed beside Daniel, listening to his even breaths, my eyes wide in the dark. The house felt fragile, the walls paper thin. One knock on the door could shatter it all, and I knew it wouldn't take long before someone came asking questions. The knock came sooner than I expected. 3 sharp raps against the front door, steady and deliberate, sending a jolt straight through my chest. Daniel was still upstairs, shower running, leaving me to face whoever stood outside. When I opened the door, rain-washed light spilled over a tall man in a dark coat. His presence was composed, his posture unyielding, but it was his eyes that unsettled me most. Pale, sharp, as if they could peel back layers I fought to keep hidden. "Mrs. Carter?" His voice was calm, almost polite. "I'm Detective Hale, may I come in?" My mouth went dry. I stepped aside, forcing a neutral smile, my fingers digging into my palms to keep them from trembling. He walked into the living room, taking in every detail. The neat cushions, the faint aroma of dinner reheated earlier. He didn't sit right away. Instead, he let silence stretch until I thought I might shatter beneath it. "I'm leading the investigation into Clara Whitmore's death," he said finally, settling into the armchair opposite me. "I understand your husband worked under her?" "Yes," I replied quickly. "Too quickly. She was his boss, and you?" His eyes flickered to mine, unwavering. "Did you know her well?" The lie slid out like a rehearsed line. Hardly. Just a name, really. But even as I spoke, I knew he saw through me. His gaze lingered, studying the twitch of my lips, the dart of my eyes. It wasn't accusation yet, just calculation. Daniel entered then, hair damp, shirt clinging loosely. He froze at the sight of the detective, then masked it with forced composure. Hale shifted smoothly, asking Daniel about work, about Clara's leadership, about the last time he'd seen her. I listened, pulse racing, praying my husband's answers wouldn't expose the cracks already forming in my own. When Hale finally stood to leave, he offered a faint smile, though his eyes never softened. "We'll be in touch." The door closed behind him, but his presence lingered like a shadow. For the first time, I realized the walls of my lies were already beginning to crumble. After Detective Hale's visit, the house was heavier, every corner thick with silence. Daniel busied himself with papers, calls, anything that kept his eyes from meeting mine. I watched him, waiting, the way one waits for a dam to break. It was past midnight when he finally cracked. He sat at the edge of the bed, head in his hands, shoulders trembling. The sight startled me. Daniel, the man who always wore confidence like armor, suddenly stripped of it. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered. His voice was hoarse, raw. I sat up slowly, my chest tightening. "Do what?" "Pretend," he lifted his head, eyes bloodshot. "Clara had me cornered. She used everything, my career, my mistakes, even you, to trap me. I thought if I gave her what she wanted, she'd let me go. But she never did." His words tumbled out in fragments like glass shattering across the floor. I stared at him, numb as he admitted what I had already known. There was something between them. And yet his confession wasn't liberation. It was betrayal dressed in guilt. "You let her control you," I said, my voice low, trembling with fury I could barely contain. His gaze met mine, broken. "I didn't know how to fight her. And then you started suspecting. I thought I'd lose you too." I thought his voice cracked. I thought maybe I already had. The bitterness in my chest curdled into something colder. He didn't know. He had no idea that Clara's control was already severed, that her lifeless body had ended his torment. I had ended it, and yet as he wept into his hands I felt no relief, only isolation, because he was confessing sins that no longer mattered, while the weight of mine grew unbearable. I reached for him, not to comfort, but to keep myself from screaming. He believed his nightmare was over. Only I knew the truth. Mine was just beginning. Daniel's confession should have freed me. Instead, it shackled me tighter to the truth I carried alone. He believed Clara's shadow still loomed over us when in reality her body had long gone cold. His guilt ended with words. Mine lived in silence, festering, multiplying until it consumed everything. Nights became unbearable. Sleep slipped further from reach as whispers threaded through the dark. Sometimes they carried Daniel's voice, other times Clara's. "You killed me," she hissed from the corner of the room, her figure flickering in the dim glow of the street lamp outside. Her eyes, the same eyes that once met mine in that hallway, followed me everywhere. I jolted awake one night to find the bedsheet stained with crimson, my hands slick with blood. My scream tore through the silence, until I blinked and saw only clean fabric beneath trembling fingers. Hallucinations, my mind playing cruel tricks, but they felt real enough to leave me shaking until dawn. During the day I rehearsed normalcy, cooking meals, folding laundry, exchanging shallow words with Daniel, but every clatter of dishes felt like a siren. Every ring of the phone sent my stomach twisting, and then Detective Hale returned. He sat across from me in the living room, posture relaxed, eyes merciless. "We've been speaking with Clara's neighbors," he said evenly. "They heard shouting that night. A woman's voice, not hers." My throat constricted. I forced a smile, my nails digging crescents into my palms. "People hear things in storms. Wind carries sound strangely." His gaze lingered too long, as though waiting for me to crack. I looked away, feigning calm, but my pulse betrayed me, pounding so loud I was certain he could hear it. After he left, I collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. My lies were splintering under his weight. Clara's voice returned, louder, echoing through my skull. "You can't hide forever." The walls seemed to close in, the air thick, suffocating. I pressed my hands over my ears, desperate to drown her out, but the whispers crawled under my skin, relentless. I was unraveling, piece by piece. And it was only a matter of time before someone, Hale, Daniel, or Clara's ghost, tore the truth from me completely. The house felt smaller with every passing day, its walls pressing in like a cage. I could no longer tell whether the footsteps I heard at night were real or imagined, whether Clara's whispers belonged to my mind or to the storm outside the windows. When the knock finally came again, steady and deliberate, I knew it was the end. Detective Hale stood in the doorway, hat in hand, eyes as calm and unyielding as ever. Daniel hovered behind me, confused, his hand brushing my shoulder as though to steady me. But I was already breaking apart inside. "Mrs. Carter," Hale said softly, almost kindly, "we need to speak again. Alone." The words felt like a verdict. I followed him into the living room, my legs heavy, my breath shallow. He didn't sit this time. He stood, watching me, waiting. "We know about the argument," he began. "Witnesses heard your voice. The timelines don't add up, and you've been unraveling." His eyes locked onto mine, piercing. "Isn't it time you told me the truth?" I tried to hold his gaze, but tears blurred my vision. My body shook as though my own secrets were trying to claw their way out. Daniel called from the hallway, his voice sharp with worry, but it only pushed me closer to the edge. "The truth?" My laugh cracked into a sob. "The truth is he broke me first." I pointed toward the doorway where Daniel stood, stunned. His lies, his betrayal, his silence. He pushed me into her arms that night. He left me no choice. Daniel's face paled. "Emma, I wanted to stop her," I continued, words tumbling out in a rush. She had him. She had everything. And I lost myself. One moment I was screaming, the next the knife was in my hand. And then she was gone. The room spun as the confession left me, raw and jagged, filling the silence with horror. Hale didn't move, didn't flinch. Only his eyes softened, as though he had been waiting for this crack all along. Daniel's voice trembled. Oh my God. The clink of handcuffs echoed louder than thunder. Hale's voice was steady. Emma Carter, you are under arrest. As they led me out, the night air cold against my skin, I turned back toward Daniel. My voice rose above the silence, fractured but defiant. You destroyed me first. The door shut behind me, sealing the truth forever.